A major attack on Hezbollah deep inside Lebanon. Pagers belonging to Hezbollah fighters blew up, causing thousands of injuries and several deaths. Hezbollah and the Lebanese government have blamed Israel, and the Israeli military says it will not be commenting on the incident. The Biden administration is calling on both sides to resist an escalation.
Ultimately, this is something that needs to be resolved diplomatically. It's very tough to achieve a diplomatic resolution to the conflict across the blue line as long as there is ongoing conflict in Gaza.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is on his way to Egypt to revive ceasefire talks that have been stalled. Iran's ambassador to Lebanon was one of those injured as well. Joining us now to talk more about this developing situation is North Central professor William Muck. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah,
Always good to be here.
Okay, so we all have been talking about this after hearing about this today, and we're surprised that pagers were involved. How significant is Hezbollah's use of pagers for communication, and why are they specifically using that?
It's really revealing, right? And what's sort of been comical about this is that all the news articles covering this are having to explain to listeners what a pager is because, people don't use pagers anymore. But I think it's telling. So it's revealing that Hezbollah is well aware that Israel has capabilities of listening in on their phones and locating individuals. So over recent history, what Israel has done is tracked phones and used it to target enemies. So I think this was the idea of getting around that by using pagers. Now, but again, all of this suggests that Israel's also, if they're the one behind this, able of getting into production, into supply chain, and then put these pagers into Hezbollah officials. So it's really stunning in terms of the scope of it and how effective this was in terms of the sheer number that have been targeted.
How could these pager blasts affect international efforts? I just mentioned that the Secretary of State is on his way to Egypt to try to revive ceasefire talks. How could this hinder that effort in Gaza?
Well, this is a significant attack, right? And Hezbollah is going to be very, very upset. Lebanon as a whole is going to be upset about this, and they're likely to respond. And what we've seen over the last few weeks and months is this tit-for-tat back and forth between Israel and Hezbollah. We also have the conflict between Israel and Hamas and Israel and Iran. So what we're seeing is that the conflict is starting to spread. And of all the actors, Hezbollah is maybe the most dangerous because they have a lot of arms. They have a capacity to really escalate the war. They are much, much more heavily armed than Hamas is, right? So that's the potential here, is that this could spiral. So the Biden administration is doing everything they can to try to calm this down, although they haven't been particularly successful at that.
Well, you mentioned Iran. Let's talk about what role do you think Iran is actually playing in this situation, given its alliance with Hezbollah?
Yeah, so they talk about Iran and Hezbollah, that Hezbollah is essentially a proxy force for Iran. So Iran is not directly fighting Israel. They're fighting Israel through Hezbollah. Similar with Hamas, right? So Iran funds Hamas. And so what happens is these actors have a lot of resources, and it just, again, creates the danger for more fighting. Eventually, Israel may say that they want to deal with Iran directly. So that's why this is so dangerous. There are multiple different fronts that Israel is addressing. They're also worried about the Houthis down in Yemen. So they're all these dynamics that could quickly spiral into a much, much wider Middle East conflict that could involve the United States, Iran, and Israel. So these are all the things that has the U.S. diplomacy and State Department worried.
And something that could add to that worry, Hezbollah's response, of course, is pending. What do you think is the most likely the repercussions for both Lebanon and Israel?
Well, what Hezbollah generally does is launch missiles back into Israel. So I'm assuming we'll see something like that. But given the scale and the sophistication of this attack, Hezbollah may try to do something unconventional, right? This is really changing the nature of the game. Hezbollah is going to be angry because the attacks through these pagers did not distinguish between combatants and non-combatants. And that's one thing the United Nations raised today, is that you have to make sure that you're protecting civilians. And this attack today didn't do so, and likely will cause a more excessive response from Hezbollah.
Professor Muck, as always, we appreciate you joining us and breaking it down for us. Have a good afternoon.